In this module, we will learn about unbiased and consistent test. My dear students, whenever we design a pair of hypotheses with a null and alternative statement, then we need to check that for those tests, there are certain desirable characteristics or the properties. So we would have to see that whether those tests would have that unbiasedness or the consistency property. Now, why we are going to test that? Usually we test them for various kind of hypotheses, such as if we talk about hypothesis of independence, where we used to test that whether the two type of variables they are in relation to each other or they are independent of each other. Or there might be certain type of hypothesis where we would test that whether the distribution is symmetrical or it is non-symmetrical. Now, my dear students, what do we mean by symmetry? Symmetrical distributions are those kind of distribution, if we just focus on to their shape, they are bell-shaped distribution, and the right hand side is the true image of the left hand side. So symmetry is one of the desirable property for the parametric test. So we need to focus on the unbiasedness first. So a test will said to be unbiased if power of the test for each possible alternative that will exceed the level of significance. Now students, if you just focus on to this equation, I would be explaining it through this equation. Theta are the parameters of interest. Now each one would be for the alternative hypothesis. They are being denoted by H1. So for all possible alternative hypotheses, if this particular statement is true, that is power of the test, it exceeds alpha. Now what is alpha? Alpha is the type 1 error or it is the significance level. So if it is true for a test, we would be calling that test as unbiased test. The other property we are going to talk about is consistency. Now, my dear students, a test will be known as a consistent test if the power of the test that approaches 1 when we put a limit over n, that n has to be indefinitely large. So, you are going to understand it through this equation. अगर आप इस equation को देखिए, this is the power of the test. So for all possible alternatives, if this power approaches 1 when n is indefinitely large, that means n approaches to infinity, then those kind of tests will be known as the consistent test. But what if this particular equation is not true about certain tests? Then those tests will be called as inconsistent test. So if we just make a comparison between the unbiasedness and consistency, then consistency is considered to be the weak property as compared to the unbiasedness, which is expected to be satisfied for a class of possible alternatives for which it is designed. So, my dear students, in that case, we would be requiring some more detailed information about the power of the various tests. So power is the desirable property. If power of the test is something which is high for a particular test, then we may give less weightage to this particular property, that is consistency. So in this module, my dear students, we have learned that what is the difference between the unbiasedness and consistency and how they are being desired for a particular hypothesis test.